Hello. Alright, so go ahead and jump. Those of you who are not familiar, this is Frontiers Reach Battlespace. Go ahead and boot this up for a second here. I'm just going to show you what it is. Frontiers Reach Battlespace is basically a spaceship management game. The idea here is to create a low stress sort of management game that is basically the exact opposite of what Frontiers Reach 1 is. Frontiers Reach 1 is a sort of very complex, very large game that requires a lot of focus and thinking, whereas Battlespace does not. It may still require a bit of thinking once you get in here and you start understanding what it is you're actually dealing with, but generally speaking, it will not require anywhere near the cognitive workload that Frontiers Reach 1 requires. Load this up. Alright, so what you see here is my spaceship. Right now there's only one spaceship. Might add more later. We've got our electronic warfare satellites. We're going to go ahead and clear that for the time being. So, war momentum. So in Battlespace, your goal is to assist friendlies on the ground to increase the war momentum and win the battle for this planet. First start out, you have access to the electronic warfare and assignments panels, and assignments panels, you basically select a operation here, or select an assignment, and you send fighters out on that assignment. I have to fix this, but this is basically we'll show that off here in a second. Starting out in engineering, we have the ability to come in here and unlock different technologies, and these different technologies will incrementally improve our carrier. So today we're going to be implementing animations for logistics tab here. So if I click on logistics, here we're getting logistics requests of various types. Here we have, looks like I gotta fix the text there, and here we have different cargo hold, or we have our cargo bay with different types of cargo in here, and we can basically click on one of these and answer the call for logistics below, on the planet below. We're going to hold off on doing any of that just yet. I don't have icons in here yet, but this is basically our salvage fleet, which we can send out to go get more cargo, as it will salvage supplies from wreckage and enemy satellites, basically. And then we have logistics drones, and these get launched down to the surface of the planet to deliver logistics to friendlies in the fight. We're going to close it out. Right now, we're going to go to the helm, and we are going to travel to a new location. Frontiers Reach has basically been maxed out. I won the battle for this previously, so we're just going to travel to a new location. I'm going to leave the sound off for the time being because I don't have audio controls set up in the app just yet, and I don't want to tweak it in the sound mixer right now. Alright, so we've reached the new location. We're going to talk to this guy right quick. He gives us our first priority assignment. We're going to go ahead and fire that up. Fighter Wing Alpha is going to go ahead and launch. They're going to go out on their mission, and while they're doing their mission, we can do other things. So we've got a incoming request for fire. We're going to go ahead and answer that. And we have Intel. Intel operations are currently on stand down. Please check back later. Basically, the Intel teams are gathering intelligence, and when they have compiled a report, they'll submit the report to us, and then we submit that to Planetary Theater Command down on the planet below. We also have the Electronic Warfare Suite operations room. Here we can basically begin building our microsat network. Each of these different types of microsats do something different, and they affect different things. And at any point in time, you can wipe the network and start over. So for right now, let's go ahead and increase our comms relays. Get a couple of decoy sats, and let's get a hacking uplink. Construction queue will run, and while that's doing its thing, we will run over here to the logistics. Close that. So there goes the first microsat on logistics. We're full up on cargo. We've got 250, 250, 250, 250. We have a maximum of 1,000. So what we really need to do here is answer cargo requests. So let's go ahead and ship medical supplies. Whoa. That's strange. I'll have to double check on that one. Assignments. Definitely bugs to be solved. So while our fighters are out on assignment, we can actually come in here and assign other fighters. Go ahead and assign the bombers, Bravo Wing, which is a bomber squadron, bomber wing, to carpet bombing. They're going to go out, they're going to do the carpet bombing, and then they'll come back. Microsat away. Incident report. So every once in a while, a random incident is going to pop up, and we're going to basically take damage, or something else is going to happen. You may not always take damage. A member of the crew negligently stored hazardous materials in an unsafe manner and caused a fire in the storage bay. Repair teams are working to get the fire under control. When that happens, you can usually come to engineering, and you'll see your hull integrity gauge here do something. Usually it's either up or down. I will probably add more things in here eventually, so you can get like just a general readout in the engineering panel of your vessel stats. Hangar. This is actually where you can get just the status on all of your fighter wings. This is a full squadron, 5 wings of 3. So that's a full squadron there. We're still launching, or constructing and launching microsats. This is actually pretty important right here, because to check on every once in a while, and I've got some things that will give you little notifications here and there, but every once in a while there's a chance that a portion of your microsats will get destroyed, either through enemy action or through wear and tear that's not specified specifically. It's not specified exactly what the cause is. Your E-War officer is just going to let you know, hey, some of our microsats have been destroyed. You'll come back in here and reconstruct them. So let's go ahead and add a few more there. And in our engineering panel, we want to basically pay attention to what we've got going on here and make educated decisions about how best to expand the capabilities of our vessel. Now, some of the stuff, if you zoom in, you'll see it says requires scaffold. For that, we will have to go back to Frontier's Reach, where there is a construction scaffold, and then we will have access to those upgrades. Without going back to Frontier's Reach, we will not have access to those upgrades. So that's something to take into consideration. Eventually, each planet that you liberate through gaining war momentum and filling the gauge all the way up, each planet will eventually have different buffs. So you'll go to each planet to do something different. Fires, let's go ahead and... do we have comms, drives, damage control, microsat controller? Let's see, where is the radar, weaponry, orbital guns? We can get the orbital guns without the scaffold, so we'll go ahead and do that. Saturation fire, walking barrage. Let's do walking barrage. Coming distress beacon from a nearby civilian ship. They are requesting aid and supplies as they've been 7 days adrift and have not found assistance now. What should we do? Should we give them supplies or should we ignore them because it could be a trap? We'll help them out. Oh, nope, it was a trap. So we're slowly repairing, but this costs us, and the cost will be, if I remember correctly, the cost will be deducted after repairs are complete. Assignments, we've got 13 seconds left on this one, 61 on that one. I could just fill this out. I can have a maximum of 5 assignments active at any one point in time. I think what's going on here is I need to adjust some of the gains on this, because like food rations, yeah, we're getting a little too high on the war momentum there. I'll have to adjust that. And logistics drones are a one-way thing, so like once you launch a logistics drone, you will have to wait until the constructor finishes, but you can get more constructors, so you can get, I think you can get up to a maximum of 3, and you can store a maximum, you can eventually upgrade to a maximum of 9 logistics drones at any one point in time. Close that. Like, Bravo Squadron is back. Go in here, see what we can upgrade. Large drone storage. Let's go ahead and hit that. Go ahead and construct us 3 more drones there. Large cargo bay. Efficient engines. Don't have enough for that just now. Some of these prices are going to change eventually. I've got things set up right now for I basically got it set up now to make it easy to test and work my playthrough for development purposes, but eventually this will all get balanced out for gameplay considerations. Last ditch effort, we want saturation fire for that one. Saturation fire is basically going to use all of our guns here. War network. Okay, so some of our drones got destroyed. That's what that red means there. That'll stay red for a while. Okay, one of our crewmates negligently stored materials. Happens from time to time. So we actually, I'm gonna let this one finish, and then we're gonna warp it back to Frontier's Reach after a moment here. Alright, so if I try to warp now, I'm going to get this notification. Sprinting to a new location will destroy all currently deployed satellites. Do you wish to continue? I'm going to hit no for the time being, because I do need to check this. Looks like we've got all of our sats. Then I'm going to hem back here and hit this, and then I'm going to hit yes. And what that will do is that will clear out our EWAR satellites and prep the ship for jumping. Or sprinting, I should say. In Frontier's Reach, it's called sprinting, because I demand to be different. I actually need to fix this. This shouldn't be showing up when the scaffold is here. This should actually only be showing up when we're under 100%. So we're going to get docked up here, and then we're going to go into engineering. We're going to come down here to weaponry, and we're going to unlock the missile bays. Now, while I'm here, I'm just going to show you this. Basically, we have a little cannon on the front, and we can click on these to get doubloons and war momentum. We're at max for this planet. I need to fix that, so we're not going to get anything. We can also come in here and check on the assignments, because there are still some assignments that are being done. Recon patrol, we can send a unit out on a recon patrol. And they'll come back to us here as well. Now, the logistics panel is what I'm going to be working on today. On the one hand, I need to get icons here in the salvage fleet indicator and in the logistics drone indicator. On the other hand, I need to add an animation of some sort in here somewhere on the ship that will allow us to have a little bit more visual feedback on like what the ship is doing outside of the user interface. So on the one hand, we're going to have to tie in this light here for the sake of the user interface. That way, when we've got this panel closed, we can see here some sort of indicator that we need to pay attention to this section of the interface. And then of course we have to have a animation somewhere present on the ship to let us know what exactly the ship is doing. Even if we don't necessarily see it because the user interface is in the way, we still need something. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Pull up my garbage code right here. Don't judge me. And let's see here, activate points of interest. Ops disabled equals true. We need to flip this. That to be false is what it is. And we are going to come over here to Blender, because this is a little bit of art, a little bit of an art stream, and we're going to do some artwork. Now, I've gotten started here a little bit, but I'll show you what I've got here. When I do my artwork for these projects, because I'm an indie dev, I work almost exclusively alone on this stuff, and I have a lot of problems because when I was in college, I doubled. I did both art and development, and code development. And my first job was working on AI-powered smart kiosks out of college. So I do both art and code, and I've been working on becoming a better artist. But there are some things that, like, AAA games look as good as they do because they have a lot of technology that I don't exactly have access to. And when I can get access to that technology, it's usually not as good as what AAA studios have access to. With that said, um, what I have learned is that there are some techniques from old school game development that are still applicable in the new environments, because game engines haven't really changed much in terms of how they render. What's gotten better is the tools for making the assets that go into the game, but those tools also cost money. In this case, what you're going to see today is an old school method for creating and optimizing artwork, which is known as atlasing. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to UV map this mesh and all the other stuff I'm going to make tonight to a large texture atlas. This is what it looks like. It's got lots of different textures on it, and we're going to use probably a portion of this, but I'm going to show you to what extent this can be used. Because this small little mesh here that I have is not the only thing that has been UV mapped to this. In fact, I'm going to minimize my game view here and just go into the Unity editor and show you just one example of... Come on. Of course it's going to take its time. We'll go back to Blender for the time being. And we'll click on this, because that's also going to take time. All this stuff has to load, and it's really frustrating, but whatever. Right. So, everything on here is actually UV mapped by hand to this giant atlas. And that's not the only thing. Come on. Basically, I have a ship generator that I've been working on, and I add different holes to it as time permits me to work on it. Right now I have a bunch of stuff to include antennas, satellite dish, what I call LiDAR domes, radar dome. I call this the odd sensor. It doesn't look like anything specifically, it's just kind of odd looking. Solar panel, missile launcher block, kind of generic armor block, random greeble bits. So, and this is one I've been trying to get a little bit more interesting designs for. Stuff like this is a great example. Fuel tanks, storage tanks, fuel tank, oxygen tank, round fuel tank, embedded round tank, or fuel tank, and storage tank. And we've got engine pods of different types with engine support arms, little winglets. Let's see what else is there. Oh yeah, there's different turrets. So we've got like point defense turret, slightly larger turret, main gun turret kind of thing, and a laser turret with a camera attachment. So if like you want to change a laser turret out for a recon camera, you can do that. And then of course there's different bridges that can be added. Some are a little bit more intricate than others. And this ship right here was made with all of that stuff. Today we're going to add a sort of drone launch bay, which is what this is for. So, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to select all of my faces. See, I'm going to hit unwrap. Now I've already cut these seams in here. I'm going to go back to this view. And what this is you want to cut your seams according to how you want to divvy up the model. So I'm going to select these, and I'm already in edge mode. Don't need to go to edge mode. I'm already there. We would come in here and hit mark scene. Now I've already got them marked. That's why they're red. And I'll do this again for some other assets coming along here shortly. But right now what we want to do is we want to go back to this view, select face, select all of our faces. We're already laid out, and from here what we want to do is we want to start adding texture to this thing by assigning each of these UVs to a different part on the atlas. Now in this case I'm going to assign just a straight blue emissive here, because I don't want to show the actual interior of the vessel. I just want a sort of light emissive color like this to be visible when the doors on this drone launching bay open up. Then I'm going to come in here and select this stuff. And some of this stuff, like I've got edges in here that I've marked, but I may not necessarily want these edges marked like this. So I'm actually going to clear the seam, and then I'm going to select, before I go any further, this blue edge here. That means that your edge here is sharpened, and I'll get into that here a little bit later. Don't want that. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to hit unwrap. Drag this over here. And we're just going to scale this up and adjust it so we've got something that's worth showing off here. You're basically checking your different angles here so that you get a good look at how the texture sits on the UV map, or how the UV sits on the texture map, as well as what it actually looks like in the 3D view. If you do this enough, you will actually become a better UV mapper. It will legitimately improve your ability to UV map things. And there are tools that you will learn here that you might not learn not doing this. And I'll show some of that later. Alright, so in this instance, we don't have a perfect match here. So I may want to look at assigning a different texture to this. Or alternatively, rotate it this way. But I don't really like that. It's too disruptive. Let's see here. What we're looking for is a natural seam that we can use. And while we can deform the UVs a little bit, we don't want too much deformation, because otherwise we'll get issues with it. Okay, so that's not too bad. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. We'll come back to it later. Alright, so as you can see, I cleared these seams out here earlier, and I kept this one. For this ring here, I clear these. clear seam. What I don't want to do is I don't want visible seams to correspond with each other all the time, because then it kind of looks artificial. So what we want to do is we want to make some of these seams intersect with each other or run perpendicular. So I've got a few different options for trimming. That one wouldn't be too bad. I've already got this large trim up here, so let's try this one out. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that you can totally lose textile density if you're not careful. Textile density is the amount of texture pixels that are in a UV shell. So you definitely want to be careful about how much textile density you use or lose over time. Alright, so for this, I'm actually going to UV map these two pieces, or two sets of shells, UV shells, as they're sometimes called. Let's find a good texture for these. Do. I don't want to use this again. We're already using that somewhere else. This could probably be okay. Hard about it. Expand that just a little bit. That down just a tad. And we're going to do the same with this one up here. Again, we want to be smart about how we're using this. Might be a little difficult to get this one seated in the right spot. May want to come down here and set it up here. Now, you'll notice we don't have a natural seam right here. We've got kind of an unnatural seam. So, what I'm going to try to do with this next set of UV shells here is I'm going to try and find a good natural seam to put on the edges. And I may need to deform these just a tad to make them work properly. But I'll show you a trick that will help smooth that out just a tad. That there. Set that there. Alright. What I'm going to do, you really only want to do this when you absolutely have to, because it does add topology to the mesh. As you can see, we've got a little bit of odd deformation in the mesh here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of edge loops in here. Now, I really don't like the way that this looks. Might actually look better without that sometimes. Just kind of depends. So yeah. I'll have to sit on that one. I may come back to it. But what that does is that actually gives us a more natural seam there. Come in here and select this stuff. And for this, I actually want to go ahead and eliminate these seams here. Edge cuts. Clear seam. Vertex. Face. Unwrap. Alright, so this is where we're going to use a new tool. Alright. We're going to use a tool that is very good for making your life easier with UVs, even if you don't use this method. Follow active quads as the tool that we want to use. We need to make sure that we have an active quad selected, then hit F3, hit follow active quads, and that will actually straighten out the UV shell for us. But before you can actually use that, you want to make sure that your UV shell has at least one perfectly straight quad in here. Just like what I've got here. Put that up there, and put this one down here. Bring this over here. We're going to thin this down just a tad. Scale it up. And boom. Now, it's important to understand that you will get seams in here if you're not careful, so we'll want to move these things around just a tad. Avoid getting any overt seams. Of course, in this case, we've also got a little bit of a misalignment. See, this texture doesn't quite end the same. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select that. I'm going to come in here and we're going to hit this stuff, and we're actually going to rotate this. Come on. I have to move this one again. Nope. I think we need to move this one as well, or rotate it, I should say. Right, so that's a lot better. Much better than we had previously. Considering how close or how far we will be from this, it's not too shabby. Now we need to grab the inside here, and I'm actually going to grab these right here. I'm going to map these separately from the other sides. grab these. We're going to layer these over top of one another. I think this would be good to have some kind of paneling. Do this one. That looks pretty good. All things considered. Alright, so I can live with that for the time being. Right now, we need to look at the door. Alright, so I made this piece of mesh earlier. This is actually cut straight out of this one. Basically duplicated the object, went in here, hit faces, select face, invert, delete face, and then pulled it out. That's how I got this. So, I'm going to come in here, make sure I assign my material, and we want to go ahead and just lay this out as flat as possible. Then I'm going to go edge mode, and we want to cut this vertex mode. Here, how do I want to do this? Let's go select our faces, extrude. I'm actually going to delete these. Bridge edge loop. Same as thing on this side. And we're going to split. Oop. Bridge edge loop. Edge loop. Alright. That's looking pretty good. Now we want two doors on here, so what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate. On this one, we're going to delete half of this. Go into this view for the time being. Half. Delete half. Copy paste the location so that we can basically sit right on top of each other. And here, we also want to bridge our edge loops. Alright. That's important because what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to bevel this edge. And then we're going to merge our vertexes at last. At last. At last. We're going to select these other edges. And we're going to bevel those as well. Just to get them out of the way for the time being, because I'm not sure if I want to merge these yet. We're just going to send that out like that. Alright. We've got something that kind of starts to look like a door. I will worry about pivots when we get it in the engine, because I need different animation pivots for this sort of thing anyways, so we'll worry about that when we get there. Meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and origin to geometry. That actually worked for both of them at the same time. It's kind of odd. First time I've ever noticed that. Alright, so what we need to do here is we need to have we actually need to basically lay in some seams. Go back to this view. Before I do that, what I'm going to do here is we're going to select our faces. We're going to do an inset. Excuse me. Alright. This inset allows us to have a little bit more texture variation. For instance, we can come in here and do a border on here, which is exactly what we will do. Go ahead and get all of our cuts in place. Transparent mode. Alright. Mark seam. So, hit edit mode, select. We're going to do our first layout. Alright. Shell mode. Go back to texture. For the time being, I'm just going to select a random spot on here to assign them to. I think I know exactly how I want to use these, or exactly where I want to put them. I think it's going to be right here. Much of the visible deformation as possible. Alright, so earlier you saw me basically laying in actual individual cuts. That's not bad. There are some other ways that we can get those cuts. For instance, I come in here, select this, hit Y on the keyboard, and just start moving this stuff out. Another way that we can get cuts. In this case, I want to essentially line up like with like. What's going to be important here is continuity. Different textures, or between the doors in terms of their textures. And in this case, I'm going to line this stuff up here. Excuse me. Let's actually rethink that. I want this to be relatively easy to do here. I don't want to have to do them individually. Alright. We're basically going to do something similar here. But I'm thinking that I may want to cut these middle pieces out. Set those off to the side for the time being. And for this, let's go ahead and grab it shell in shell mode. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to line these up best I can. So I will only have to do this one time. I'm going to look for any kind of funky deformation while we're doing this, or partitioning them out. If you've done an operation, you can repeat that operation with Shift R. That's what I have key bound, or have my keyboard bound to in Blender. Alright. So, here we want to basically get everything set up for the same orientation. These are ready. Now we just need to find something to map them to. Okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Skinny that down just a tad. Something like this probably wouldn't be too bad, but if I do this, it's going to have to be like one section or one, something like that. Not too bad. Maybe we can do better. Maybe. Surely I must have something I can use. Kinda like that. Maybe if it were smaller. I think I can live with that for the time being. Might change it later. We'll find out. Alright, so go ahead and get these UV mapped. This stuff, this might be a little bit difficult. Yeah, I don't like that. Not a huge fan of that. Come back to that and think about it. We at least have our doors for the time being. Probably put our pivot somewhere along this line. That way when the doors swing open, get like enough clearance there between the door and the frame. Alright, so I actually want to change this up a little bit. I think we can do a little bit better here. Now in Blender, there's a little feature here called Correct Faces in the tool panel. I have this bound to in. You can hit the toolbar here. Hello, Jimmy J. Hit the toolbar here and click on Correct Faces. And what that allows me to do is that allows me to move UVs here, or the vertexes, without disrupting the UVs too much. Back into face, select here. Now what I want to do here, again, I'm only doing this stuff because I've got limited resources. If I had AAA budget, there are much better ways of getting texture on the stuff like this. But this works for somebody with a low budget, like a very, very, very low budget. So, like these. Whoop. I accidentally hit the H key. The H key will hide even UVs. So, gotta be careful with that. Let's do yellow for this. And because it's not a bad idea. See this right here? This normal map here? Just barely see it probably. We're gonna line that up what we've got on this part right here. Yes, this gets really tedious. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close. Okay, so I actually have a final step in here. I think this is pretty much good to go, but I actually have a final step in here I need to get done. When you are modeling, you will notice at times that your models will sometimes look strange. If I hit shade smooth, your model will probably look like this. Now you can come in here, tell it, hey, I'm going to select all these edges. I'm going to hit up here, I'm going to hit sharpen. Now, I've sharpened them, but it doesn't immediately change the model. So I have to come over here and hit under the normals panel here, hit auto smooth. Good number for this is 60. We're going to come in here and change these as well. Mark sharp. However, we got one more thing we want to do. Go to edit, weighted normal. Keep sharp. What this will do is, generally speaking, the default settings are okay. I use the defaults pretty often. What it does is it adjusts the weight for the face normals so that you get good shading on the object. And I'll pull up a cube here just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So this is especially important if you're using bevels. So if I come in here and I hit bevel, and I hit, let's see here, shade smooth, you get some kind of strange perspective, or some strange lighting on here. If I hit weighted normal, this should help out a little bit, but we can also come in here. Of course, this is especially useful if you're baking anything down. Oh wait, I forgot to do the auto smooth. Derp. And just turn off, keep sharp. There we go. So I'm going to show that again because I screwed it up. cube. Move the cube somewhere where it's out of the way of everything else. We're going to do a bevel. Do smooth, shade smooth to get our garbage lighting again. We're going to turn on auto smooth. As we can see, we get these sharp edges. We don't really want that. Then we come over here, hit edit, weighted normal, and then we get something that's much more reasonable and looks better. Just to show you what these look like. Weighted normal, no weighted normal, no weighted normal with no auto smoothing. So, three drastically different lighting effects on three different models that are essentially the same shape. This is what you want. This looks like you probably just started modeling and you're still grasping some of the basic concepts. This looks like you don't know what you're doing. Unless, of course, you plan on baking this down, because what you can do, right? This would be a low poly model. And what you would do, you would create a high poly model. Put your low poly model over top of your high poly model, and you'd bake it down so that the low poly detail is on the low, or the high poly detail is on the low poly model as a texture. That's part of that baking process. So, low poly smooth, low poly hard, low poly with face normals adjusted, and high poly. That's part of that whole process of creating a game ready asset. Here, I have my own workflow that I've worked out for all of my games, so I'm doing things pretty differently. I probably don't need to have face normals on here, but I add them because it's just a good idea. Or weighted face normals. But it's just a habit at this point. So I'm going to hit shade smooth, auto smooth, get all of our sharp edges. I do want these sharp, and it's important because in this case I'm actually marking these sharp, so because I'm not going to add any more topology in here, but I'm going to make sure that these are sharp. And when I come over here and I hit weighted normal, you'll see that I want to make sure I keep my sharp edges. So let's line these up again. Let's pull this over here. We're going to add this as like a component because it's not necessarily a greeble bit. Greeble bits are just kind of like random bits and pieces that you can add onto the surface of a vessel or a structure. In this case, this is not a greeble bit. This actually has utility. Alright, so let's call it drone bay. Drone bay door left. Drone bay door right. Alright. We've got a drone bay set up. I will eventually model a drone. I'm not going to get into that tonight. Something I'm not quite ready to dive into just now. I will have to design a drone And then once I've got a design worked out in basic model form, then I'll go through and detail it a little bit. But for right now, I'm just going to focus on the drone bay here. Alright, so we've got the UV editing done. So from here we need to export the entire thing, because this is all part of a large ship kitbash. So what I want to do here, I'm going to select all. We're going to go into face mode. This might take a little bit. We want to select all of our faces. Go to face, triangulate faces. Go back to object mode. Then we want to export to FBX. Now, there is an option to triangulate your meshes on export. I have found that that has adverse effects on the models. So in this case, I do triangulation before I even get to export. Selected objects, apply transforms, and tangent space. This is absolutely necessary for this to work. Right. We want to overwrite our ship procgen parts, which is already set up in here. Hit export. This will take a while, and one of the ways I kind of test to make sure it's done is I will click off into random empty space to get the little spooling icon, and then once it's done exporting, I can come in here and I want to make sure that I undo the triangulation. Always undo your manual triangulation. Otherwise you will save your model and you will lose all of your quads, and your quads make it easy to edit things. Then I want to save the file. Alright, coming back to this. I want to select my model here, my kitbash, show in Explorer, and I need to pull this up as well. I want FBX exports, get procgen parts, today's date, overwrite, shouldn't see any major changes because everything should be just the same. But I'm going to grab this greeble bit here, duplicate it, and drag it over. I'm going to rename it to Drone Bay. Call it Port Drone Bay. Click on this because that'll take us back to the model. And I'm going to just drag this in here. We're going to scale this down to 1, 1, 1. Yeah, there's a reason why I used blue, because we've already got yellow for the bridge window and red for the engines, and yeah, so we're going to use blue for this. Now I also need to get my doors in here. Drone bay, door left. Like that in here. Actually, no, that's correct, technically speaking. Ship is facing the other way. We're going to do drone bay door right. And drag that over here. We're also going to put these underneath the drone bay itself. And we're going to put the drone bay up here. to be a separate component. Apart from just the ship hull. You want these to be relatively lined up. Alright, so one of the things that I need to add in here, I probably could have done this in Blender, but I opted not to. Kind of a dummy like that. But I want to add empty left hinge, right hinge. But I also wanted to show what you can do with respect to probable, or like what you can do with this stuff, because there are times where you may need to model something and you can't necessarily get it in the right position all the time. So what you do instead is you create a empty transform to serve as the easy way to control things, and then you put your object inside of that, like what I'm about to show you. Left door in here, right door in here. Now this is pretty awesome because this means that, like in this case, I actually need to fix this. I want to zero this rotation out. Zeroing out your rotations can make life a whole lot easier. So this is now 0 to 90, and this is now 0 to negative 90. This is actually really useful when you want to programmatically control something. So like if you want to control it through C# code instead of just animations, this allows you just an easier time to do that. So you don't have to sit there and account for rotational offsets. You can just put it inside of an empty object, zero out the empty object rotations, and then control the empty object, or control the parent object instead of the actual door. Because if you see this, this is 180y, or 180 degrees on the y-axis, whereas the parent object here is 0. So I don't have to sit there and control or count for 180 degrees rotation. I just, manipulate the parent object. Alright, so I've got an animator on here already. We've got an animation. I have layers. In this case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add an animator to this. Go ahead and select our current animator. We're going to make a new animation controller. Animator controller, I should say. Drone bay. I'm going to put this on the drone bay. And then we're going to go to animation. We're going to create a new animation. Drone bay doors open. We're going to add a key here, because we want this to be the starting animation for when the drone bay door is open. We want a 3-second animation for the drone bay doors opening. We want to make sure it's an exact 3 seconds. And then we're going to rotate that to negative 90 and rotate this to 90. Alright. And then make life just a little bit easier for ourselves, so we don't have to reanimate anything. We're going to find our drone bay door animation, duplicate it. Drone bay door is closed. Drag that in here. Go ahead and set up our triggers. Open. Closed. I'm going to connect any state, because we want to be able to go from any state to any state. Now, I need a default state to put this into. I'm going to use the drone bay doors open, because when we first start off, we want the drone bay doors to be closed. We don't want this animation to play, so we want the doors to stay closed. So use this as set default state. That will basically keep that state until we're ready to go somewhere else. Right. We go back here, select drone bay door is closed. Now, when we play this, it looks like this, because we need to flip this around. Open. Closed. Alright. Now, I'm going to have another object in here that I'm going to animate, but I'm going to animate that later. I think right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this tied into the carrier art controller right here. Go ahead and pull that up in the script. There are a couple things we need to do here. First thing I want to do is we've got our port side and we need our starboard side. Good. Because on this one side we're going to have the salvage drones coming out of this side, and then we're going to have the logistics drones coming out of this side. We're going to have to set up different containers for those two different drones. What we want to focus on here is just controlling the opening and closing of the doors. That's where we come back here. We've got our microsat animators there. We want public animator drone bay. Let's go port side drone bay. Starboard side, starboard drone bay. Excuse me. Let's see here. Now we should have something in here controlling this stuff. Actually, we don't want the animators in here. We want the game object is what it is. Game objects. With the carrier art controller, all we're really controlling is what is visible. And then with the actual, where is it? Quartermaster controller. Here we want the animators themselves. So, and these I will not retain, keep public. Animator, port side, drone bay animator, starboard side, drone bay animator. And then do this. On awake, we want to get port side drone bay animator equals port side drone bay, but we want to Actually, we want to do this in the start because there's some initialization things that are going to happen on Awake and other places. What we want to do here, we want to void start, and we want to access this via the carrier art controller. Art controller.instance. There we go. Same thing with the starboard. So I am using GitHub Copilot to help speed up my workflow here. If you're just starting out, I highly recommend doing this manually. I've got about, I think, maybe 6 full years of actual coding in Unity and C#. I don't have any formal training in programming outside of some little things here and there while I was on the job for various companies. I'm pretty much self-taught, so there are actually a lot of gaps in my learning. So if you see me doing something wrong and you think you might know a better way to do it, please do not hesitate to shout out and I will look into it. So we're getting our animators here and begin salvage ops. So what we want to do here is we want to send the trigger to the animator. So port side animator drone bay dot launchcraft. Let's do just open. And what we want to do, we want to set up a enumerator, enumerator. This is basically going to be a coroutine. Shut port side drone bay door. What that's going to do is it's going to play for, go for 9 seconds to make sure that we actually have enough time for the doors to open and close, as well as for any other animations to happen. And what we're going to do here is it's going to play for 9 seconds, and then once it finishes, it's going to close the doors. You also want one of these for enumerable shut starboard drone bay doors. So in this case, we're going to open the drone bay doors, and then we're going to start coroutine. We're going to do the same thing here. Nope, we don't want that. We don't want starboard. We want port side. And then for here, send logistics drone. To adjust that. What we want to do here is starboard drone bay dot open. And this did enumerable, not enumerator. It needs to be an enumerator. I've actually never used enumerable. I have no idea what that does. So, yeah. I'm gonna let this build. Now over here in the carrier art controller, one of the things that we need to do is actually, it's not here, it's in the tech tree. This is a lot of code. I may try and find a different way of doing this. But this is basically what controls the tech tree and how we assign and worry about what tech you have access to. So in this case, I want to carrier art controller dot instance dot port side drone bay dot set active equals true. I want to do the same thing. Whoop, excuse me. Hit the caps lock there. I want to do the same thing with the starboard side. So this is when we're adding the technology, but then we want to come up here. When we set up the tech tree, when the player first loads up, we also want to make sure we're getting it here as well. So make sure that our player has access to cargo bay and make sure that those things are turned on. Back here, let it build. Alright. Minimize that. Save our scene. We're going to go to the game. We're going to hit play. Oop, I forgot something. I usually forget something here and there. But what I forgot to do here is I forgot to assign our drone bays these variables. This is actually really important because if they're not there, we won't find them. I could probably do it through some sort of other programmatic means, but I like to be able to like go through the list and see things represented in the inspector. That's a personal preference. Alright, so we're going to load up. Hang on. I've got an error somewhere. Maybe? Something wasn't right. Very strange. We're going to go to Jotun. This may also be just because I'm streaming something. Oh, nope, that was something to do with that planet. Not entirely sure what that was, but I'll have to go back and figure out what that was. May also just be Unity being stingy, being difficult. Alright, so if you remember, I unlocked cruise missiles, or the missile bay, so I actually have access to more options here. Special operations request, incoming fire request from the surface or frontiers reach. Special forces operatives are in the area and need immediate fire support on a key target. I'm going to use a guided missile. We'll get to see one of the missile launches here. Logistics. Let's send oxygen tanks. And deploy the fleet. So it looks like these doors are not opening, so let's find out why that is. This would be why. I also need to check on something here. See how it says, see on our drone bay doors closed? We actually need to turn that off for the looping. We don't want these to loop. And then when we come over here to the state transitions, we actually want to plug these in to a trigger. So when the open trigger is triggered on, those doors should open. And the same thing here for closed. Go ahead and save. Hit play. Load up our player. There's something going on here that this isn't liking, that it didn't seem to have a problem with before, but for whatever reason it's having a problem now. Maybe something to do with lights and shadows, I don't know. But we're going to go to Jotun. And then we'll give the logistics drone bays another try. Play the feet. And there it is. 9 seconds and then it'll close. It says parameter closed does not exist. That's strange. Let's find out. Closed. Because of course, I'm one letter off. For a moment here, we're going to do a little test because I've got a frame rate issue that's popping up. And I want to make sure that that gets handled. So I'm going to boot this up real quick. I just want to make sure that this isn't being caused by something else. Alright, so we're definitely getting a frame rate issue here. Let's find out. I have a hinting suspicion it might be the scaffold. Yep, it's the scaffold. So, find out. Let's fix that. I imagine it has something to do with the lights here. Point light. Go here. This is what I call the scaffold lighting. We don't need this to cast shadow at all. We definitely don't need it to do blend probes. We can turn ray tracing mode off. And we'll save that. Don't need that. You can also turn all of this stuff off too. So let's see if that has an effect. Maybe, maybe not. We're about to find out. Load up. Alright. That didn't fix it. but that's a good optimization step regardless. So let's do this. Let's turn all of these lights off. Nope. Turn our animator off. Nope. Turn this animator off. Nope. Turn the actual mesh off, it works. There must be something going on with the actual mesh itself. Ah. It doesn't like to cast shadows is probably what it is. We'll keep shadows turned off for the time being. Alright, let's go over to Jotun. I will need to fix that so they don't come on immediately after we've jumped. And let's go ahead and deploy the fleet. And as like before, we're just looking for this door to open and close. There it is. And we're going to check the logistics side here. Ammunition. Hit the ammunition request. There it is. And the door is closing. Alright. That's integrated. I think next time I do one of these dev streams, might be working on the drone, might be working on something else. Hopefully I'll have all of that fixed up and integrated. And yeah. So, till next time.